The contents of this podcast episode may be triggering and emotionally challenging to some audiences due to a discussion around suicide, self-harm, depression, and/or a reference to other mental health disorders. Continue at your own discretion. Welcome to Season 4 of the To Be Honest podcast. My name is Avery, and I'm one of the hosts for the podcast this season. I say one of the hosts because we have some super special episodes this season produced and hosted by members of our Youth Advisory Board that will focus on mental health news, policy, wellness, and more. But we're still going to have episodes in our regular format where we interview young adults from around the Bay Area who share their personal experiences with behavioral health with the intention of reducing the stigma around this topic. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Alexandria Geremew, a young adult in the Bay Area who is a dog training business owner. Alexandria enjoys spending time with her dogs, going hiking in the Santa Cruz mountains, and spending quality time with her boyfriend and family. Today, she's on the podcast to talk about her experience with death within her family, self-harm, being 5150 at an early age, and her stay at a mental health hospital in San Francisco. So welcome to the podcast, Alexandria.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. What an intro.
Hopefully I covered everything.
That was everything. That sounds like my life.
Oh, great. So before we start, I like to ask every guest, to be honest, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really good. I definitely can say I'm doing really good. Definitely in a different point in my life, but in a sense of just like things are coming into full swing, business. But I'm doing good though. Can't complain.
Awesome. Sounds like you're thriving for the most part. So,
yeah.
So nice to hear that. But yeah, I'd love to start off by kind of diving deep into your background. I know you've kind of talked to me a little bit before we recorded about your background. So would you mind sharing a bit about your family life and being first generation?
Yeah. So I'm the youngest out of two older sisters. My mom and both of my parents actually immigrated into the U.S. around 13 to 14 years old. So they were both born in their separate countries. My mom was born in Nicaragua. At the time, she was also born in the 70s. There's a civil war. A lot of war was shed throughout her country when she was being raised there. So she fled with her 5 or 4 younger sisters and came into the U.S., I think, when she was around 14. And my dad was born in his country, Ethiopia. And pretty much left Ethiopia around, I think, like 13, a little bit younger than my mom. And then they both actually ended up living in the Bay Area throughout their lives. But so they actually ended up meeting in San Jose. So my parents met around 18 to 19 years old. But being first generation has just been always very interesting for me, I think, in a scope of different cultures. But my parents were definitely, I would say, I've more so had my mom in my life. But my mom is definitely the backbone of everything. Very strong woman, thick skin all throughout her life. And we'll definitely talk a little bit more on how that's, definitely came into impact. But definitely first generation, I would say my sisters, because I was the youngest, definitely my sisters, I feel like held it all up for me. I learned a lot on what never to do in life and they taught me how to tie my shoes. My mom was a single mom all throughout her childhood. So she worked long hours. My oldest sister pretty much took a lot of care of us. And I was definitely raised a lot with my grandma too. But my mom has definitely been like a great example of definitely the American dream, I would say, that she's tried to uphold for herself. She's just like honestly the hardest worker ever. And that's kind of a lot of my work ethic too, is definitely like work until you can't. And that's a good and a bad thing, but I definitely think, like first generation, I feel like everyone can kind of relate to. If you have it, you use it, and you can do it. And totally that like pressure of like, you can do anything.
Yeah, that's so interesting that you come from two different, it seems like very different cultures. So was there ever
Very
like
different.
a culture clash growing up? Like, I don't know how much time you spent with your dad or what your relationship with him was like. But yeah, was there a difference in like parenting styles or just like how you grew up?
I would say like it's actually interesting. Parenting styles, but pretty similar. Like I would say that no elbows on the table, eat respectfully. We all sit together at a meal. I would say like they definitely both share those things. But my dad, for sure, I was closest to my dad's side growing up. A lot of the cousins around me were around our age, and that was on my dad's side. So it's like a lot more closer to my dad's side. And I would definitely say in like Habesha culture, it's a very family gathering. And so I definitely connect a lot more to my dad's side. And I hold a lot more to that because a lot of my cousins were just like raised with us. We were just definitely always all together. And it's really cool, like looking back on photos, like how mixed we all look. It's just like a mix full of kids. And a lot of Ethiopians are lighter skin tone. And so definitely my sister definitely look a little bit more Ethiopian than me. But growing up, though, we all just kind of mixed all together, and there wasn't a lot of cultural clashes, I would say. And so, no cultural clashes between like my dad's side. I would say like he had a sister that my mom and them would always like bicker, but both really young. So my parents met at like 18, 19. So
Oh, wow.
so very still young, and I would say like more of a dynamic issue. But growing up, though, it was honestly pretty cool. Like I love my mom's side and Nicaraguan state culture as well. But I definitely connect a little bit more to my Ethiopian side.
Yeah, it sounds like
Mhm.
you have or you come from a very big, like joyful family, which is great. And you've
Huge.
you shared with me, yeah, you shared with me that two of your cousins sadly passed away when you were younger. So I'm kind of curious
Yeah.
how that affected you,
Yeah.
and how did you cope at a young age with that?
Yeah. So unfortunately, both of those cousins passed away on my dad's side. So
Mm.
I'll kind of go into first start with my first cousin. His name was Arfani. He was my dad's younger sister's son, her first son. So that's my first cousin. Also had three younger children after Arfani. So about four of my close cousins. Arfani was around my oldest sister's age. So I would say like it's funny because like we all had a cousin for each other. Like
Mm.
my older sister and Arfani, they grew up same age, same born, I think born the same year or maybe a year difference. Same thing with my other cousin, Blazon, my middle sister, Danielle, same kind of age. And so for me, I had my youngest cousin, Nina, same age. And so we all kind of had each other, our own, cousins. So Ronnie was a little bit older than us. I would say once he turned 18, 19, he immediately was like, I'm going to go travel. I'm going to go live my life. I'm going to go visit Ethiopia. And so pretty much like it's a really crazy story, actually. So he went to Ethiopia, I think when he was like 19, 20. Pretty much like he immediately like super big in culture. He actually went to San Jose City College and was a pretty big basketball player there. Had a huge community around him. And so pretty much he went to Ethiopia and told us all about it. And you guys have to go to Ethiopia. Like this is everything. Like the culture out there, the food out there, it's just like amazing. Realized too, like the cousins were raised very American. So like we have American accents. We look very American. Again, a lot of Hobbits are lighter skin tone, but definitely there's a range of colors of people that look out there. Actually, a lot of white ethnicity people live out in Ethiopia. So it's pretty like diverse mix, especially in Ethiopia. But for my cousin, I would say definitely like we're all very American. And so when my cousin went out there, he definitely preached the concern that we all had, and we were like, hey, we don't know, Amharic, which is their language. We don't, we'd have to go all together. And there's like for the cousins, we all really wanted to go, but definitely I was still super young. I was a little bit hectic about leaving the country. And that was a lot of fear for specifically me. Like I did definitely remember the first time he went out there, he was super adamant, like, you just got to go. You totally have to go. So he was 20 when he came back from his first trip to Ethiopia. I think he went back about a summer later, so maybe like a year later. And so pretty much like it's a really weird story because the story was told in another country. So
Mm.
and so at that time when he went to go visit, he was visiting my dad, my uncles, and all of that stuff. So he had people out there. And so pretty much one day they go to a restaurant. I think it was a restaurant named Arfani, and it was a burger lounge. It was like a American style restaurant. But then when they left, my dad left, and my two uncles and Arfani ended up driving away from the restaurant. They ended up actually leaving a little bit early. It's said that they got an altercation with people. Apparently, there was a burger comment saying like, "Oh my God, like why would you eat a burger in Ethiopia?" you look American, you're American. I think there was a little bit of talking. Um, and so the story goes, my uncles left in a dispute. They were arguing with people. Our finance like, let's get out of here, let's go. So they got in a car. The police and the system out there is really crazy. We're talking about like guys are carrying AK-47s and AR weapons on their backs, and it's very normal. There's a lot of military people out there, and so it said that pretty much like this guy had paid some guy to shoot out their car, and so pretty much what happened was my cousin was sitting in the back or the front seat. I think he got hit from the back side and then immediately just went straight through his heart.
Wow.
It wasn't said that he suffered or anything. It was just said that it was so instant and so fast and just drove, and that's pretty much how that ended. For us to get that call, it was pretty traumatizing. I'll never forget, like, when my mom got that call, immediately I just, like, knew somebody died. And I definitely, I would say, like, growing up with my dad, I always had this, like, anxiety based on people leaving. And immediately when I heard my mom, like, cry like that, I think I was getting ready also for, like, science camp. I think I was just, like, 8th grader. So I'll never forget just, like, my mom getting that call and just hearing, like, the cries and stuff. But for my older sisters, I would say they definitely accounted that way more traumatically. I think I just went into, like, a shock mode.
Mm-hmm.
And pretty much how that ended and resulted was he ended up getting shot. They had to fly his, obviously, body back to the United States. My uncles at the time actually retaliated, ended up committing, almost killing actually 2 cops out in Ethiopia. It was just like pretty big thing. So actually the president at the time wrote out to my grandma and apologized because it was an American dying on their soil.
Mm-hmm.
It was a pretty big deal. And he was really loved here in San Jose. Like his turnout for his funeral was insane. It was at Capitol Hill. He's buried at Oak Hill Cemetery, so right here in San Jose. It's a huge hilltop. And pretty much, like, I would say, like, the fog between us getting the call to his funeral, I don't really account for a lot. I don't really remember a lot besides just feeling this, like, heavy, deep sense of, like, change. And that being reflected through my mom, my cousins, my sisters, and my aunts and my uncles, and just, like, seeing that dynamic really just go. And the traumaticness, I would say, too, like, definitely a little bit of shock. My whole family can probably recount saying, like, it's all just, like, listed blurs of, the last kind of few days of getting the call and stuff. And also at the time, too, my uncles were on the run of, like, they pretty much, like, put one cop in a coma and almost killed the other. And it was really a retaliation thing. And it was, like, super traumatizing because I did know my uncles when I was younger, and it was just really crazy because that anger, like, you could feel that for sure. I would say, like, a lot of people felt anger, valid for sure.
Yeah.
But so pretty much, like, my uncle's actually went to jail, and I think they're still sitting because of how bad their jails are. And so pretty much, like, that was my first, I think, like, rude awakening of just, like, life. And I would say I'm more so, like, I feel like a lot of my emotion even today carry it towards understanding the deep sense of, like, loss that's still even carried today. But it was just super traumatic. The more I think about it, the more I'm just like, wow, that's, like, really crazy. It's something that, like, every time I kind of get into it a little bit, it's hard to go into full detail because it's just, like, awful, really.
Yeah.
There is no sense to kind of that one. But so, yeah, he died at 20 years old. I think he was right before his 21st birthday. I want to say maybe he was under 21. And, like, I'll never forget, like, going throughout my life, like, all I could think was, like, no way I'm making it 20. So young. Like, it was just such a tragic loss, like, to just lose that young. And so that was just, like, a huge shape. I would say, like, that was the biggest shape of, like, my family's life, my sisters, and definitely my mom. And, the dynamic shift of a lot of loss and tragedy. And a lot of mental illness comes out of that too.
I just want to thank you
Yeah,
for being open and
yeah,
sharing. So I know it is very emotional and it
yeah,
clearly is a traumatic thing that happened. And I can't imagine going through that. So I just appreciate you
yeah, of
being open about it. Yeah, I'd love to
course.
hear about your other cousin as well.
Yeah, of course. Funny because like she's like a cousin, but more of like older, like an aunt. So
Mhm.
she's actually like she was in her 30s. After our Fani passed away, I would really like note that like a lot of my family really was like we did everything. Like that was where like we started valuing the time with each other, seeing each other, Easter, getting together, things that we were older, we don't celebrate anymore, or we don't have time to get together. Like after that point, definitely a lot of more seeing each other, and so actually my cousin Rosie, her name was Rosie, her first name was Rosanna, but we call her Rosie. She was like my mom's best friend. So like even when my mom actually first got introduced in the family, like my dad's sister like hated my mom. And so immediately my mom connected with Rosie, that again is on my dad's side. Um, so he's like, I think he's like a cousin of my dad and then is like a second cousin to me. But grown up wise, like that was like my mom's best friend. Did everything together. My mom, when I got to around like 13, she started trusting me. Obviously, my sisters would watch me at home, so she was living her best life. We were going out, and so my mom was supposed to join her. She called my mom, was like, "Hey, let's all do something. Let's all go out." And my mom was just like, "I can't. Like, I have something to do. I have to wake up super early in the morning." Pretty much, like, she goes out, and she's with all of my mom's other friends, and she was obviously too drunk to drive. So she ended up sleeping at her friend's house in San Jose. And she was pretty much like she slept a little bit, I think, and then woke up. So she like slept for probably about maybe like 3 to 4 hours.
Mhm.
And then woke up and was like, I'm totally fine. Like, I'm ready to go home. Like, I got to drive home. Her drive home was from San Jose to Morgan Hill area.
Mhm.
So that commute is on 101. It's a really dark drive at night. There's not any lights on the freeway. And so she was like, I gotta go home. Like, I have a husband at home. Like, I'm ready to go home and like, I'm gonna drive. And so her friend obviously wasn't gonna stop her because she seemed like she was okay to drive. And I definitely bet she was. It was the tiredness that I think got her. And so she ended up actually crashing her car off 101 right before the Cochrane exit. And there's actually a trail that walks underneath. And at the time, there's like this like split freeway where you have northbound and southbound. And right in the middle, it's like this random area. And every time I drive past it, I'm like, how? But for some reason, she diverted off to her left hand side and went in between the freeways and split down. Broke a chain link fence, which apparently just got put there. It's just these weird things. And at the time, again, there's a walkway and there's a really nice river. That river usually dries up. The river was a little bit full. And so it's known that she crashed her car into the ditch. And unfortunately, we think she either fell asleep at the wheel, maybe got head trauma, but her car flipped upside down in the water. And I don't think they found her for a few hours. But so, like, that call was like awful. It's just fucked up. Like, hear my mom go through that one again was really fucked up. That one was really hard. I'll never forget, like, feeling that again. This like overwhelming like wash of just like shock. I think like what I did was just like actually like fall. I like immediately just like fell on the floor and was just like aching from my soul because I could feel my mom and like I knew it wasn't a joke. And like these things like I feel like after our funny we would never joke about. And just for that to happen again was just like awful. I don't honestly remember a lot. Even her funeral, like I don't remember a lot at all. I do actually remember going to her open casket, unfortunately,
Mhm.
which is like I remember our funny had an open casket too, and I was told not to look. But for me specifically, like I just wanted to like that was my first realization of death, and I'll never forget he didn't look the same way. And so for me, I didn't want to go look at Rosie, is because after death they embalm, and also their face gets really puffy, and they actually look like they gained like 20 to 30 pounds. It's actually really like, if anything, more confusing as a
Yeah.
child. And so I knew for Rosie, I was just like, Probably shouldn't. And it wasn't that it was traumatizing. It was more, I think our bodies was definitely traumatized. I'm not gonna lie. I probably like wish I didn't leave that as my last picture, but again, didn't look the same way. And for me, I was just like, okay, like it's just a spirit thing. Like I can't look at this body and think that they're attached to this.
Yeah.
But for Rosie, I think I did too. And I felt just like super numb throughout like the next like couple days. Like that's when things were just like really declining um, for my mental health. But at the time, I was only like 13. Or no, I was like barely turning 13. So like shitty time for a 13-year-old. But like on top of just like, losing, my dad at 8 and then to kind of drugs and him getting deported and he never really kept up in our life. So like I connected a lot to his dad's side. And so to lose two people super tragically, definitely affected and shaped, I would say, like obviously the dynamic with that family, but definitely the overwhelmingly like, sadness that a lot of people feel. And like Rosie was literally like my mom's best friend. Like it has like taken a lot from my mom. She changed really as a person after that.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't go out as much, stopped taking those risks. Didn't think a lot of things were worth it anymore and really kind of secluded herself. And unfortunately, didn't really connect herself back with those friends that were there that night. And that's still something, still going through that. But I think my mom holds a lot of, anger and resentment towards that situation. And I would say definitely my family has processed it in so many different ways. But for me specifically, like I feel like now, again, because I hold a lot of trauma to it, I would say like it's just almost like again, it feels almost identity to me and survivalistic for me to be like you got to keep going, like I got to keep going, I got to keep doing stuff. But I wouldn't, it wouldn't be fair for me to not say that. I definitely felt still a lot of pain towards a lot of these subjects, and they hit me randomly and. Now that I live back in the area specifically, it's just like wash of reminder or connection. And those days like really still kind of take me. But I would say like a lot of my view on life has been shaped though by a lot of those stuff. And so I don't hold a lot of anger. I hold more like anything. I'm still always just trying to understand.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing.
Of course.
I don't want to get emotional too because I'm trying to be professional, but like they sound like such special people. And I'm so sorry you went through that. So thank you though for sharing. I think you're living in a way that keeps them alive, like it keeps their memory alive. So I think that's really special and such like a powerful message. And I know you've been through a lot since then.
Yeah.
So I do want to get into that, but I just want to, thank you so much for sharing and being so vulnerable because this is such a tough topic and losing two people like back to back is just unimaginable. Love to kind of move on a little bit, not like to something else, but I know that you do have experience with self-harm, and I don't know if that was like a product of what you went through or if that's like completely separate. I know you must have gone through like a dark time after those two deaths, so I'm just kind of curious what was your first experience with self-harm like?
So I would say like pre-self-harm, it was more dark thoughts. It was like pre-grief because for me, I think I like just always felt this like rude awakening at a really young age. And it's so dark to like think like this, but really like I'll never forget. So random. I can't tie anything else in the day besides me just like thinking to myself as a young child. I think it was around like 8 to 9. Me just thinking like, I don't really want to be here. And like, I feel comfortable saying that statement because it was the truth. I like generally like couldn't concept like why. Like that was my first thought. So like from that moment, to just questioning things and being like, I don't have motivation right now. I just felt this like different from that age, and to go through kind of like my dad and then the loss. I would say like it really started with a mindset shift of me being a really dark person. And by dark, I mean like just like super just sad in general. My thoughts were not healthy. Um, I held a lot of anger towards my dad. I held a lot of resentment towards that figure. And I held a lot of pain that my mom had from him and my sisters had from him. And from it coming from my mom, gone to my sisters, like I felt this sense of anger. And so really like the best way to put it was just like bottled up pain and anger and resentment. And it carried through me being just a pretty depressive person. And I would say like naturally, I'm a very isolated person. I'm not going to lie. I love laying in bed. I love doing nothing. My best qualities, and especially now that I'm such a busy person, but my best qualities is downtime. Like I am a downtime type of person. Mm-hmm. But when I was a very sad and very young person, I definitely used that more as an excuse to really not do anything and not, put myself out there. And it was just like off and on switch, because I'm not going to lie and say I was a, isolated child. I was a very happy, like I'm out in front of, my school. I was wanting to do plays. I like loved being around people, but there was always this like back afterthought. I was thinking, my home environment or within my family environment, especially after loss, that like, it just felt just so sad. Mm-hmm. And like with that sadness as a child, and like, why do I want to continue life? And it's like such a rude thing to like say, but it really is true. Like I think by the point of like 10 years old, post, losing, or about to, go through grief, I would say 10 years old is when I really started contemplating really with the idea of, understanding my pain. And I was like, am I a depressed person? Do I have anxiety? Am I suicidal? And I never really like consider myself suicidal. And there were certain moments in my life where I could like be pretty honest about, me contemplating suicide a couple times throughout my life. But I would say like as a young person, like it really was this like bounce back in between like, okay, what is this all here for then? And that like struggle of not being able to understand that and being so young, I just like couldn't comprehend everything in my life or people in my life as that serious, or things are not going to stay the same, to change. A lot of anxiety around like me growing up, things changing throughout my life. So I would say like my first thoughts of self-harm definitely started, I would say like after our Shawnee died. And it really, I don't want to tie it to like the head specifically, but I would say like the grief that my family went through, and watching my mom and my sisters and, my dad bailing on us and not really being in contact through this time, realized he was in Ethiopia at that time that he died, and he still couldn't pick up a phone call and get on a call with us and conversate with us. And I had a lot of anger towards that. And I would say my sisters hold their own anger. And, my middle sister is a very hard person, and she's almost really like my mom in that way, and that's why they butt heads. But they're thick-skinned people, meaning they can say things sometimes that hurt your feelings, but if you bounce that back on them, they don't really feel that, because they're just hard people. And when I was younger, I was a very sensitive child, and my mom, I would say like the sensitive quality for me is almost a trigger word in my family towards me, is because that was the word used when I was going through pain. Or when I was going through certain things in my life that I should be sensitive about, or, it wasn't really hard to hurt my feelings as a young child, for sure. And again, because I was the youngest one, I could feel like this sense of like, oh, crazy me, like crazy. Yeah. And I'm just like, wait, like you actually hurt my feelings here. Like, let's talk about it. And I was a very like intellectual child too. Like I was very one to be like, not a bystander. If somebody says something that hurts each other's feelings, we all got to talk about it, because that's coming from your own pain. And like I was a very all out child, and I think like for my sisters that was hard for them. They really wanted to keep me young, and I think like the keeping me young was just depressing me, because in the sense of like I felt older with them. I felt like those, I was like 12 going on like 30, my mom used to say, because I really was like intellectually like a lot. And so like when it came to kind of how my sisters approached me, I would say like, my older sister has gone through immense grief with our Fani passing. So by this point, like really like she was, about to graduate high school, really just trying to figure out herself. And so at the time, like, I feel like my house life, I don't want to say it was depressing, but for me, it really was because, my oldest sister was a really big, like, almost father figure for me, or just another parent. And then at the time, my middle sister held a lot of anger towards my dad and a lot of anger. And I would say, like, for her, like, she just bottled and it just didn't go anywhere. So for
Mm-hmm.
me as the young one, like, I was bottling and I just needed it to go somewhere. So I would say, like, my first self harm, like, it really started with, like, me, um, I want to say, like, I was, like, breaking things, but I was breaking things to just, like, hold on to them. So, like, I would break a piece of glass and hold
Mm-hmm.
on to the glass. And, like, this is, I know that, like, I'm allowed to go dark here, but, like, this is, a lot to talk about. So I'm going to be
Yeah.
pretty honest, but, like,
Yeah.
I would, like, hold and collect pieces of glass knowing that I wanted to hurt myself with those.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it was like this collection thing. And so the thoughts were going, but I didn't know if I wanted to do it. Because I think my first time hurting myself, I think I first tried the rubber band method. I think I was like Googling, saying, like, okay, like, what are these things happening? Am I going to self harm? And so I was reading, put a rubber band on and snap your wrist if you're getting these thoughts. Um, and for me, like, I didn't feel much relief from that. And so I think, like, in my journal, I would just, like, really kind of, like, almost draw out or use the glass and rip my pages, in this, like, thought of, like, I'm angry, like, I wanted to get stuff out. Um, and I think it was just, like, this one moment at night. I felt super isolated. I think my little sister was being a total biatch to me, probably, and made certain comments, and it was just, like, bottled feeling of, like, it just, like, was this release when I decided to grab the glass and just press it against my thigh, and I just pushed as hard as I could. Um, and, like, I would say, because what didn't work for me was, like, I feel like the pain just went too fast. And when I self harmed, there was long effects of what I did. I get sad, honestly, like, when I, like, because I really haven't gone into full detail. This is, like, super triggering even for my mom and my sisters.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can't even imagine, inflicting pain on themselves. And, like, I actually love that I'm the first one to kind of go really into self harm, because for me, like, I know 99% of people can't imagine actually hurting themselves over internal pain. And for me at the time, it was like, this is how I'm coping. Um, and so, the first time I did it was all on my thighs because I could hide that. I did a lot of sports. We live in an all female household. We walk around in underwear. We can do whatever we want. And that was the first sign to my mom, was that I'm not feeling comfortable anymore and I'm hiding certain parts of my body, or I'm, on the toilet, not hiding myself. I was pulling my pants up too fast. And my mom had this, like, I think, idea that I was hiding something. And I think she probably thought it was a tattoo at the
Mm-hmm.
time. But so, like, for me specifically, like, I was hiding things. I collected glass. I didn't even realize that, like, razors were a thing. And this is where I definitely went a little bit too overboard when I started actually getting a little bit obsessed with self harming. And also at this time too, super weird connections, but it's significant to me, is actually Demi Lovato was just coming out about self harming at this time when I was, like, majorly deep in an obsession of, like, collecting marks on my body. And I'll never forget, like, the overwhelming, like, disgust people had towards her, and the strength of her just showing her scars. And for me specifically, I was just like, I think, like, I had this, like, sense of, like, okay, like, this isn't right. This is something that, like, something's going on with me, and this is not normal. But at the time, like, when I went to school, there were other girls at school too that were self harming, and I got caught one time in the locker room because I was starting to experiment on other parts of my body that I could hide, like my upper arm, maybe somewhere that my cuffs of my shirts didn't show, um, high up in the thigh area, my pelvic area, areas that, like, I could hide really well. And my female classmates at the time, I think they saw my like arms or something. And I'll never forget this girl, like not even shaming me. She literally was just like, oh, I do this too. And it felt normal, but also at a time, like now that I think about it, it's just really deeply sad because for me, like no one in my family knew the heck I was doing because like that's just like not heard of. Like really wasn't a thing. And so at this time too, I'm about 11, 12. And so I would self harm in the middle of the night, you know, when nobody's looking. And this is the scary part is like I wouldn't keep control over if I was hurting myself too deeply. I would just, you know, let it all dry up and just kind of like hold something to it and kind of just go to bed and then wash it off and figure it out. But those like long term marks, I think like were why I was obsessed with them. Like again, nothing was helping me because I felt like things were just too temporary. And this is also the sad part about self harm now that I'm out of self harm and reflecting back is like those marks are still there. I inflicted something that never is going to go away, which is just like reflective now as an adult. But back then, that's what I wanted was some, you know, constant pain, constant reminder of why I feel this way. And every single area of my body meant something. I wasn't self harming to just do self harm. It was like moments of me feeling immense pain. Or immense regret or shame. Any moment that I felt shameful about what I did to myself, I was just like at this point where I was like, fuck it, like who cares? Um, and also too, I was at this point where like I really genuinely did not think that I was gonna continue living here past like 17, 18. And I laugh about that because it was so true. Like even when I turned 16, I went through this like, oh my God, holy shit, I'm still here. But like back when I was 12, like it was the first thing that like I could do whatever because like I just like it just won't matter when I'm older. I just genuinely didn't conceptualize like me staying here. It became a major problem when my mom found me. And like, oh my goodness. And by this point I was moving on to razors and things were becoming way more sharp line and it wasn't looking too sick and things were just it was getting too easy for me and honestly at that point like that's when I my mom should have found me because things were getting a little bit too obsessive. I was a little bit way too overboard and at that point like I wasn't feeling the sensation that I wanted to when I originally started, so it was more of just like a mark it all up at that point. And that is really like dark, but like that's like genuinely like my mindset was just like there was no um rationalizing what I felt. Like it really was just like release.
Mm-hmm.
And so my mom came into my room and I think saw blood, but the blood was too low on my bed. And she immediately was like, show me your legs. And for some reason, I was like, how do you know? Like, show me your legs. So, anyways, my mom finds me and she immediately starts saying, no more door. Show me your stuff. Where are you getting this stuff? Fine, give it all to me. No more razors. He completely went through my school stuff, took my shavers, took my lead pencils, all these things that like I could possibly hurt myself with. I'll never forget the drama when she's going in the kitchen hiding knives, hiding butter stuff. It became like a wrecking ball. And that for me was like so traumatizing because she went into survival mode and didn't really stop and look at like what her child was feeling. And so she went into full on, we got to stop this. We got to do something about this. And it was no door, showers, supervised, show me your legs. It was actually called like a leg check. She would make me show her my legs, make sure my thighs are clear. And that's when I started getting a little bit more good at hiding it. Because it wasn't stalking. And if anything at this point it was more of like a rebellion thing. By the time my mom was being really strict. But like ideally though, like I didn't see the problem with it. I was more so just looking at my mom like, aren't you just paying attention to like what's going on? And I was really angry towards her at that fact. But so pretty much like no more door, supervised showers. She like showed me like videos of kids in her country like begging for food and you know, people in Ethiopia and like their housing and just like all these things of like you should be grateful. Like I don't give you any reason to like not want to be here. And it was just this survivalistic push on me. And immediately I was just like silent. I just shut down. And so my mom at this point is like slowly losing her marbles because her child, that didn't work, and her child still feeling pain. And I started getting better at how to hide that. I became more secretive about it. Now I really wasn't talking to anyone. Now even my sister's approaching me on the subject, and so like now my mom definitely recounts a lot of that as like she just like could not, her brain could not
Mm-hmm.
comprehend how to deal with that situation
Yeah.
at all. And so, of course, her friends at the time were like, you need to get this girl into therapy. Like, she needs to go talk to somebody. It's not going to be you, and it's not going to be your sister. And, like, understanding too, like, exactly like what my family went through. Like, it was just like this, like, this is what she needs. Self harm wise, like, I feel like I was on the spectrum of, I was almost like grossed out with myself because everyone was just so, like, non understanding that for me, I was just like, who cares? But also, like, I understand it a little bit because now I'm seeing the stars fade a little bit and things are staying there. Now they're turning black, they're turning purple, they're now going to be there and they were dark, you know. So like now my stars are all bright white. But like at the time I was seeing like the lingering effect of like actually my work, what I did. Um and then it was like hard for me too, and I started getting really like grossed out with myself. Definitely, at that point too, I was like really contemplating, suicide a lot, unfortunately, because I was like, I got caught with this factor, and I'm going on this route of now they want me to put me in therapy, and nobody understands. It was just like this big magnitude effect that like I just like knew therapy was just not going to do it for me. It was more of like I want the people that I actually want to hear me to hear me. And I was really trying to get off self harm, but this was about 14, 15. When I was really wanting to stop, that's when I, would regret things so fast. Oh my gosh, like immediately when I did, I'd be like, okay, now I'm up to hiding myself for 2 weeks. And I knew
Mm,
exactly how long it would take. We were talking about 2 weeks of I can't wear crop tops or whatever. Like there's just so many
yeah.
like things and restrictions I gave myself. So I was like, fuck, like this is more of a pain to like keep up. This habit is way more hard for me to keep up than do. Mentally it is still a thing where like I don't struggle as like I need a release anymore. But like back then, like as a young person and somebody that felt like nobody understood, I can't speak to anyone about this. There's shame around this. I felt gross about it. Unfortunately, like I just didn't have anyone in my circle that was telling me like, I hear you. Like what you're doing is like we'll show you better ways pretty much. So yeah, I would say like that's the self harm aspect of that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I appreciate you opening up about this because we haven't talked about it on the podcast. And I think you even like taught me a few things. Like I didn't realize how not impulsive, but it is almost like an impulse that you need to do it. I never really thought of it in that light. So um
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's just like so eye-opening to hear someone's like personal experience. What was
Yeah.
your experience when you went to therapy for the first time?
Yeah. I remember going with my mom. I was very intimidated. I was like, but I was also kind of excited. I actually think I was excited because for a second I was like, this person may actually hear me and may actually give me information. I just felt like there was a room for me to speak for once without judgment. Once you get there, they have you fill out this checkboard. And pretty much the checkboard is like, how sad are you today? Like, where are you at in terms of spectrum? And it was like, do you think of hurting yourself? How do you think of life? How do you cope? How do you do all these things? And my answers were honest. They were bleak and dark and sad. Yes, I've harmed myself. Yes, I've considered suicide. Yes, have I attempted? Yeah, but like it was this thing where like, are you constantly suicidal? I was like, no. They're like, do you think of killing yourself today? I'm like, no. But the first reality was like, how do you cope? And it was hurting myself, crying, anger. And so that list already apparently red flags when I
Mhm.
put that to the back. And I was like, okay, I'm all done. Here you go. But that was the truth. And I think like immediately I was so truthful. Like once I walked through the doors, I was like, I'm gonna be truthful. Let's see what I will get out of that. And so I'll never forget this guy. So my mom was in the room with me, and then the guy came in. It was a male therapist, and he starts explaining kind of the procedure, how comfortable I feel, what we'll talk about today. If I feel comfortable having mom in the room, if mom's not that comfortable, she can wait outside. I consented to not having my mom in the room. I was like, I kind of would love to feel a little bit like
you're hearing me fully and not feel too like I don't want to withhold any information. So I was like, no, we're all good. And so my mom steps out. And so immediately he kind of pulls back up that checklist that I filled out when I sat down in the waiting room. And he's like, so this is concerning. Like the stuff that you're putting on paper is worrying me. Like let's talk about a little bit about the self-harm, about you wanting to hurt yourself and stuff like that. And so like I pretty much told him like, hey, I'm not like a threat to myself. At this time, he's like, explain a little bit about depression, anxiety, and trauma and loss. And I'm starting to go through kind of like my life story. And so he's kind of hearing me and he's like valid, like he's been through so much. And he's explaining to me the options of help. And for me, I was explained that help is going to therapy and possibly start out medication. And we can talk about all these things. At that age, I'm like, I want help. Like you're telling me I got a problem. I know I got a problem. And like you're validating what, you heard me say. And so like I felt super heard actually. I was like, awesome. Like this sounds like a great game plan. And he starts mentioning a little bit like what I should do if I ever want to hurt myself, who I should call, stuff like that. There's a hotline. And then he starts telling me, he's like, but we can also offer you like more help. Like if you think you need more help, we will give you more help. And at the time I generated more help as like maybe more therapy, maybe like a group class or something. And so I told him, I was like, yeah, like I'll take the extra help. Like I'll take all the help I can get. Next thing I know, I'm getting explained what a 5150 hold is. And this was a general consensus between like their supervisor that apparently read my paper and has been kind of maybe watching. And maybe I think he stepped out of the room and talked to the guy and they both agreed, like, you know what, she could probably qualify for the 5150 and she's saying she wants the help. Let's give this to her. I'm sitting there. I'm like, wait, hold on. What's a 5150? And no, like there's no way in heck I'm going with you guys. And like my mom is like coming to the room and like they're trying to explain to her what's happening now, what's a 72-hour hold, where I'm gonna go. There's a couple beds all around, Bay Area. We're gonna try to get her the nicest one. You cannot go with her mom. We have to ambulance ride her. This is where things start getting a little bit more hectic and traumatic. And so I get in the back of the ambulance. They were like, okay, well now we have to strap you down. So they had to strap down my ankles, they had to strap down my arms. It was just like dramatic. Upon getting there, my mom was already at the front entrance. My mom already had a bag for me. But so like she immediately was there. I think she was probably waiting for like an hour. She was just waiting for us. And my mom can't come with me at that point. Once I started the entrance, I just had to say bye to her. And I would see her tomorrow during their visiting hours. And so because I was placed on an immediate 5150 hold, they're going to put me in 24-hour in a room that was like watching me. And so my room was separate at first for the first night. And so like I pretty much get admitted at night. There was nobody was up at that time. It's a really big, like almost just like a classroom. So there's different little sub quarters and stuff like that. And everything's glass. Everything has barbed on the outside. And so it's like nighttime at that point, and I'm like, okay, this is just weird. It was getting like this really scary. I was just really just like, oh my God, okay. But the room that they put me in was a little bit more traumatizing because there was cameras in that room, and I was just like, oh, I really did it to myself. And so like the first day, I really was like, regret. I regret talking. I regret saying anything. I'm not going to even open up at all because I don't want to be here longer. Like I'm just going to shut up for 72 hours, and then I'll be able to go back home, and that's going to be the end of it. But upon immediately getting there, I was just like so shocked at just like the fact that I was 1 second in a therapy room, and no joke, by the end of the day, I'm already in San Francisco on a 5150 hold. And so I went to bed that night. By the morning, I would say like I immediately started rounds with people. They let me brush my teeth. They let me brush my hair. It felt very prison-like, a little bit more like just systematic. And so the first thing that you do in the morning is like get your breakfast, and then after that is yoga. So immediately I'm like shoved into, here's your tray. If you take medication, you go here for medication. This is where you get breakfast. And there's like a menu. And I actually still have all of these. I still kept like everything that I've eaten, every wrapper, I've kept it all. Because I like generally was like almost disassociating. Like, am I here right now? Like this is just like a dream. Especially now I've been telling this back. Like it just doesn't feel real. If I didn't have that journal, I would probably be like, I don't think that's what happened. But so like it was very systematic. And so immediately I'm at a table and there's a bunch of other people and everyone's very young there. Everyone definitely is under the age of like, well, you have to be. So they're under the age of 18 for sure, but everyone looks like under the age of 16, maybe But so like immediately, like, hearing these people talk and tell me their stories and kind of give me their backgrounds, like immediately I just felt so like welcomed, and just like there is like just no shame. There's no shame at that table whatsoever. There were so many times where I was just thinking to myself, like, I don't know if my mom paid these people to be here to tell me all these scary stories, but like there was really a moment where I was just like, it's just not that my pain doesn't matter, but like the magnitude of how much pain is like out in the world, like really like struck me. And I'm a really like empathetic person. I'm a very compassionate person. I can feel other people's pain. And so like for me personally, to just like hear all of these things, I was just so on the fence about my own pain in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I went through a lot of just like numbing and just surviving. How to get out of here, just go through these hours, don't make a mess, don't say anything, you're not going to kill yourself, you say nothing wrong, and you can get out. And I didn't really like acknowledge the program up until like my last day. And my last day actually got extended by like 5 hours. And each day, actually, my mom came and visited me for like the 40 minutes that you can come and have lunch. So my mom drove up to San Francisco for a little bit of time just to see me and just to give me lunch. She'd like take me Panda Express and like drop me off like Gatorade and certain things that I like because you can't have anything out there. And I think like my last day of the program, we did a lot of therapy exercises. We talked about, coping mechanisms, how to deal with anger, how to deal with pain, grief, trauma, support. I went through a grief and trauma support class. And if anything, I really feel like I just took out life skills and just like really like having open ears towards people. Because I feel like that's something we just all don't do enough is just listen. So I would say that was like my main experience. There was really just again, like just like a culture shock of experience of just like a bunch of people's pain. And again, just that like level of acknowledgement of just like you could do anything. You could say anything at that table, and like one person there with have that sense of understanding. And so I journaled a lot. They gave me a journal. I wrote in my journal a lot, and that's definitely what kept sparking, my interest in, communicating my feelings and kind of find outlets. And so definitely, journaling, scrapbooking helped a lot. And that's a lot of what we did. We did like yoga, scrapbooking. It was really like more thinking about it like a retreat of just like supervised. It was generally an understanding of like, okay, we're all here because life has thrown shit at us. And that universal understanding, like that's really what I've taken out of it. But it was traumatizing, I would say, the act of the therapy, but like to be there, it was just like first day was traumatizing. The rest of my days, it was just all understanding. And there was a point where, like, when I left, I was like, I kind of want to be here a little bit longer. Because I didn't go to school, I was drawing and going to therapy, 5 hours a day. But so after that experience, I go home. I would say like my mom's like mentality shifted a lot. There was this sense of listening, and that was like a really big one. Wow, I'm crying a lot.
It's totally okay.
But like I got home and I think I felt a little bit of a sense of like, okay, what am I going to do now? Mm-hmm. Everyone knows that. Everyone in my family knows that I got picked to 15. I felt this sense of like nakedness in my family. Like it was like overwhelmingly like the truth. And for me personally, like I don't think I had a lot of conversations about people about it because I was really just like overwhelmed with the sense of like, we love you, we're here for you, we support you. And that was really awesome. But it felt almost like naked. I felt like my laundry was aired out. And I was so young to where like, duh, my mom's gonna call her sisters and, ask for support. So I was too young to like keep my personal information personal. Mm-hmm. But at that age, like when I got home, I remember being like actually a lot of anxiety. I think for the first of my life, I was really feeling my anxiety because it really just felt so like truthful. And at that point, I was having really bad panic attacks. I would like wake up in the middle of the night with like a rock in my throat because I like actually couldn't breathe. It was scary. I would like try to swallow, and the only thing that worked was my mom would bring me a hot bowl of water and a towel and hold my head under and breathe in, and so I could, get some better sensation or go outside, read a book. But like besides that, I was having really bad panic attacks, just general anxiety and just worried and being anxious. And also coping with like my anger. So like I still had a lot of anger. I still processing my grief. Still so young. And at that point, I wasn't looking to self-harming all the time. I would say like throughout kind of coming home, my sisters were super supportive. I would say if anything, it was more of this like, they still can never understand really, they can't fully get to the down, they can't fully get to my perspective of like taking pain onto yourself physically. I don't think any of my family members can really sit down with that. But coming home though, I definitely felt a sense of everyone a little bit understands me. Everyone kind of at least has heard a little bit. But I wasn't self-harming then, and going to those 2 weeks and kind of that follow-up kind of helped a little bit. It really felt like mandatory, and so I kind of was just like shutting down the therapy, and still kind of do today, but I was definitely shutting down a lot of the talking about it and the being there and the force of it. I just hated it. And so I definitely, around me, look to my peers and my friends and talk to my sisters as much as I can. But besides that, it was really interesting coming home and like going through just like the normality of my life. And then also knowing that like those past 3 days were so bleakly aware of pain that to just come back into this like system of go was super hard for me. That's when my anxiety picked up a lot because there's so much acknowledgement there and there's so much understanding there. And then I'm going back to the real world where we're just like, keep it going. It's Tuesday. Got stuff to do, right?
Yeah.
So it's just like, it felt just super interesting. It's still something that it's just a weird feeling, just like going from that to just back to reality.
Definitely.
But yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your experience. It sounds like there are both obviously negative aspects to it, but it sounds like overall it was like fairly positive with like connecting with other people. And the shift in your mom's mindset just sounds like pretty amazing. Like being able to be there for you like immediately after getting home probably was like a huge relief. But yeah, I'm kind of curious, like overall, if there's something that you've learned either from like processing grief or like your experience being 5150 or just like the mental health system in general, like do you have like one kind of like takeaway thought from all of the things that you've experienced?
I think just the point of like me being so young and putting what I felt down on paper and for that to be so alarming for an adult, I think that's where things I think need to be figured out because a child shouldn't feel so unapologetically sad about certain things. And like if it's valid or if it's like their truth, I feel like that shouldn't be a shock value to adults. I feel like it's more of this understanding of like they're at this point in time where they don't know that the world's going to keep going and they don't understand a lot of like the ties that they have and how much people care about them. And so I think for like a young person, especially in the mental health system, I think like a lot of the things that are the truth, we don't say because it's so truthful and it's so shock value to people. And I think that really withholds a lot of probably truth that people feel, whether it's in therapy or whether there's certain things you want to say to your therapist that you're like, it's so shock factors and so truthful that maybe I don't want to say that because I'm so scared of getting 50-50. And I definitely admit myself, like it's made me put up a little bit of a boundary of just like, I don't want to scare you that much, but it's also just like the freaking truth. My pain was so freaking unapologetically sad that it's just like, I feel like now I can just kind of jump over it. But like as a child though, like that was my truth. And like I stuck by my truth and my truth scared some people. And, kind of landed me in a system where they want to help you and they want to help you. But I really generally think like, a person that has maybe can relate to a little bit more than that could see this system of the disconnection between, the truth becoming harmful and just like at the end of the day, also super truthful. And we should be pretty truthful too about our pain and also about our suffering. Like, I think suffering is very truthful. It's telling for sure about just like life. Obviously we all suffer in different ways, but I think like as a child though, like that was my biggest takeaway is just like, wow, like, was it that scary? Did I see certain things that really triggered a, wow, is she, going to go home safe tonight? And so like, to me, I just think like that was the biggest takeaway. Of just like, okay, like I wish I wasn't that scary. It's not that I wish I changed my words, but I wish I wasn't that shocking.
Yeah, that's so
So
interesting. Yeah, I feel like we forget sometimes that even children and young adults and teens have these like real human feelings. Like we think that they
yes,
should just be like happy all the time and like going about their lives and going to
yes,
school and like family lives are
mhm,
probably fine, but like everyone has a different story. Everyone has something going on. And just like,
yeah,
yeah, being able to talk to like a doctor without shocking them that you're going through something so
yep.
serious, yeah, is so important. So what is your experience like now with therapy? Have you returned to therapy, or do you have other ways that you cope with your mental health and your grief?
I would say return therapy was like this thing after I got to 50 that it was just always talked about. I decided not to after my 50 experience. I really decided to actually start living my life, and that actually really decreased my anxiety a lot by doing and stop thinking. I really was trying to get out of my head. And so I didn't return back to therapy until I pondered the thought about 2 years ago. And 2 years ago, I did start contemplating seeing someone. I did start a few sessions with them, and it was really more so listening what their experience was and us kind of getting to the top of the surface of where I wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
But I never really got into the inner lane conversations. And it was mainly, I think, just like my own insecurity a little bit of just like going through everything again. And
Mhm.
also, like throughout my life, I processed it 10,000 times.
Yeah.
And to just like commit an hour to sit down and process it all over again just was like an overwhelming, like a little bit too intimidating for me. And so instead, I would say like throughout my life, I've constantly processed it with my peers and my friends. You know, I'm unapologetically open about my grief, especially now that we're getting a little bit older and there's certain, losses that my friends have gone through or my family has gone through, and certain areas where I feel super confident in, but it's like I feel more reflective and honest about how I did through things before.
Mhm.
And so I would say like the processing and the conversations, I've done it. I keep doing it all the time because it's like it's never going to end for me. I'm constantly, you know, open about my struggles now, or my grief. And again, my grief has just carried me all throughout these years. But I would say like committing the hour, I still have not really sat down and fully wanted to get into all of that. And it's mainly just because, and I think I eventually will. I just will definitely be very picky and
Yeah.
just a little bit more of a, and I hate that I have to feel like that, but I definitely don't think on the first hour I'll be able to get to where we've gotten like this today.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd feel so, you know, unapologetic. I feel like I'd be a little bit apologetic because it is
Mhm.
a shock factor. And it's not saying that like today I'm in harm, but before I really was in a really bad space. And I hate to feel sorry for that.
Right.
And it's
Yeah.
like weird because like today I could feel like that, but like before it wasn't like that. But definitely today I'd hate to feel like, oh, like this is about to be super dark. And it's just, I'm not sorry for it because
Mm.
it's who I am today in a sense.
Yeah.
But I haven't gone back. I think in other ways I want to, definitely more so for grief,
Yeah.
because I feel like that's the one thing that still rings. Like I felt it the first day it happened. That's something that still rings the same way. I think in other areas of my life things ring differently for me, and I can process and I can go through that. But in areas of like my grief, like as you kind of heard, like it still washes and
Mhm.
takes. So I think in that area, like I definitely will eventually entertain, talking to somebody and having those harsh conversations for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. You have to do it in your own time. And yeah, like you said, finding the right person is so key. And it's so hard to know,
Yeah.
like through a first therapy session, like if you're actually going to click with someone, like you can kind of tell, but it takes
Yeah,
like a few sessions and you're
for
like,
sure.
you feel like you're committed. Yeah. It's a whole
Yeah,
process. So I
it
don't
is.
blame you at all. So I do want to talk about one, your business, and two, a book that you wrote. So first, I wanted to ask about how you became a dog trainer, what inspired you to
Yep.
start your own business, and like what you get from being a dog trainer.
I love this. Um, so ideally, after obviously everything that I've been through, I definitely, when I really was just like, okay, I got to stay here. I fully reflected on my strengths and my weaknesses. And again, I'm going into like survival mode, just like my mom taught me. I came to this point where when I graduated high school, I had to really sit down with myself and be like, okay, like I didn't even think I was going to do that. Like really, like turning 16 for me was I think I cried the entire time because that was like a wash of like, holy crap, like it's about to hit you, girl. You did it. Because after this, you got to stay, you know? And so like when I turned 17 and when I graduated, I was like, okay, like I know my weaknesses. I'm not one to fit where I'm not going to fit. And that's just in all areas of my life. But for school, that really felt my area. It was hard just to even show up and fit in this box. You know, grading was a really big effect on my anxiety and a big effect on how I portrayed myself. And also at the time too, I missed so much school due to my mental illnesses. And when I was going through my grief to where like at that point, when you go through the life spectrum of life's too short, as a 16-year-old, like school's not it. So it's like for all these things to kind of hit you as an adolescent and then for you to get into a, you know, a system of like, you're here to learn and you're here to do certain things. For me personally, like I just never thrived in that environment. And it really was just like the bleak reality of like, I'm just not going to be doing that. And I knew I wasn't going to be doing that. I knew I didn't want to go back to school. I knew I didn't want to do anything in terms of being in a system where like you have to be reflective and you're expected of things. That expectation thing, like really spiked a lot of like harsh thinking on myself and a lot of harsh kind of like, I just hated it. I really did. So when I graduated, I had this really hard, you know, conversation with really myself. And it was this understanding of, okay, like I have a lot of good skills. I love speaking to people. I always want to work with people. I really am big in like philosophy. That was the one class that I even got an A in all throughout schools because that was the one thing I cared about was intellectual thinking and literature. I loved these things. And unfortunately, I knew I couldn't, you know, go too far because a lot of it required a lot of school. But where I was considered on the scope of was either a social worker. I love working with people, or I can be a life coach, even a therapist, actually, which is so weird. But like even in the idea of like talking to people, listening to people, and being reflective with people was what I wanted to do. I knew that's like somewhere in my area. And so obviously how that kind of translated with animals was I really do think animals are the one thing that, you know, are thinkers and they're not talkers and they're listeners. And it's up to you on how you have that relationship with them. But so like when I first got my rescue dog, that's kind of what started everything. And that was back in 2018. And pretty much like ideally didn't really grow up around a lot of dogs. And I think that was definitely a huge thing for my mental health as a child. I think if I had a lot of animals around me, that would have really helped kind of my uncoping, right? I didn't have things to do or I didn't have something next to me all the time that listened. And so, I mean, I did grow up with, you know, some animals, but my mom was not an animal person. Again, we're talking about immigrants to America here. No way in heck we're bringing dogs or pets in the house. No way. And so like, I did convince my mom to get a cat for me actually when I was 13. And this was post everything because I had a whole PowerPoint and was like, I need an animal. Like I am a isolating person. I like to lay down all day. It's not that I'm depressed. And my mom would, you know, always tell me like on a meter, like, are you okay? Like you're laying in your room a lot. And it was not just like hovering, but it was more of just check in. And I had to really come to her and be like, hey, like this is just me. Like I'm not a social charger. I need to charge by myself. I need to, you know, relax by myself. And this is just me. And a cat would be great for me. A cat stays home all day. I love cats. Perfect. So I still have my cat. I got her when I was 13. And I still have her today. But I would say like that was my like really like I need an animal around me. And so by the time I took a huge step in getting a dog, I always knew the responsibility of dog ownership because, you know, I saw other people have dogs and I knew from an early age that just like it's a bigger relationship and a more of a responsibility. My cat is easy compared to a dog for sure. So like I always knew that. But so when I got my first rescue, that kind of brought me down the path of fitting a relationship that I had no idea where to fit in. And meaning that, you know, I sought out a higher drive breed dog. So I work with working breeds. And so the dog that I sought out was at a level where I wasn't. And so it took a lot of reflectiveness, accountability, structure, for me to become a person to fit the needs of the animal that I just got. And so that really kind of started me into the idea of training. And I sought out, experience with and learning from other trainers. I actually hired a trainer for the dog that we had at the time because it was just like I needed help. I wanted to learn. And so by this point, since 2018, I really, really, really got super into training. I did some things with him, my rescue at the time, where I was like, this is it for me. This is what I want to do. And there was this like light bulb moment for me where I was like, this is actually it, because I always knew I wanted to work for myself. I always knew that obviously overhead is always going to be a thing. But when it comes to my social battery, that's super important. I have really small limits of it. And it's not that I work with dogs all day. It's actually the opposite. I work a lot with people. And that balance actually works perfect for me, is because I am considered myself a relationship-based trainer. So meaning that we go really dive deep into your lifestyle. We go dive deep into your needs, the dog's, breed that you have, their genetics, their makeup, things that matter to them and things that matter to you. And finding that, accountability system and that structure system for people is actually really, like, once I started and I fully really, went all at it and got my education, and I did a lot of seminars and I did in-person experience. I got all my hands-on experience. That's when I was just like, okay, this is it for me. This is all I want to do. And it really is the communicating to owners part, because the more that I'm in this industry, a lot of people think I'm just working with dogs, but it really is like working with dogs is the easy part. It's working with a human.
Yeah.
And people always tell me, like, oh, I want you to take my dog. And it's like, that's the easy part. It's really you.
Yeah.
And so I really connect with people. I've run my business super ethical and moral. I connect with people that really want to help their dogs. Mm-hmm. I could be making more money if I wanted to go a little bit selfish into the route of I'll take everything. But I've been very, very, very critical on the people that I work with, the dogs that I work with, the information and advice that I give out. I feel super confident within like the field that I'm in, but I definitely run it super ethical, and in the sense of I'm here to help people. And so I found that like throughout my life, I actually always wanted to become like a teacher. I really wanted to like work with kids and help people and communicate things to people. And really like being a dog trainer is just filling in that communication link that you're missing with your dog. And so like that's where I was just like, this is so much fun and this is really what I want to do. And yes, it's when I hang out with dogs all day, and that is a really cool part. I'm outside all the time. I, used to get paid for going on hiking trips with dogs when I worked for other people. And it was really this like general sense of like, okay, I'm happy here. Going outside is good for me. Shaping patterns with dogs is fun. It's new. It's different every time. And I get bored of things super easy too. And so like really when I first started training, I was like, this is actually going to be perfect, just because no dog's alike. And every dog's different. Every dog teaches you something. And that's something that like, oh my goodness, I love that so much. And for other people, that's super intimidating. But for somebody that I feel like has confident handling skills, that feels, confident working a dog, you just now have to have the human aspect. And that's something I feel super confident in too. And I think that's what's taking me very far in my business, is communicating with people and being able to fit in those links, and being very self-accountable. So a lot of like my training really reflects towards life and really reflects towards your, perspective view on accountability and being self-reflective. And so like definitely for me, like I don't work with clients that aren't self-reflective. I love the people that are very self-reflective, that have a general idea of what they're doing wrong. Like I love problem solving with people. And so that's kind of where I am now. I kind of work with other people, and then 2 years ago, I fully went independent myself, and now I'm full-time working for myself.
That's amazing. Yeah. So do you do dog training? Do you do like boarding or anything? Or is it mostly just like training, like you go to people's houses, or you have like a space where you train them?
Yeah, so I have my own space. That's something I'm super grateful for. I definitely upgraded a year ago. So I'm here in Campbell area. And so pretty much I do my own space here. I have my own facility run here. I run a tailored private in-home experience. So I don't run a high-scale boarding facility. I'm not at that level yet, nor do I want to be. So for like training-wise, I specialize within private training, working one-on-one with the owner. I do offer certain other programs, but that's first due to meet with me. So I kind of give you a general, idea of like, okay, this is the program that would be best fit for you. most of the time it's private training. Because I've built a really cool community and I have more of like an alumni sense, I do take on like for dogs that I've worked with, boarding and daycare. But for the general public, I'm closed. You need to meet with me first. You need to kind of get on a tailored plan first. But my goal definitely is a little bit obviously more high scale. I just know that I'm going to be in this career for so long that I'm just taking it. Yeah. It's got to take me slowly. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
And then the book that you wrote, is that related to dog training or is that completely separate about like your grief or tell me more about the book.
It's so weird. It's completely unrelated to like everything.
Okay.
But it was when I was 12. So it was definitely after my first cousin passed away. It was a book. It's called Ego and Ellie. This is so random. You can actually, if you Google it and you look up my name, you can find the book. It was it was in my grade, the highest rating of like comprehension skills. And so that's why I got it published. And that's why I got published is because I won that award for my grade. And so it was a huge like award thing on Barnes and Noble where they presented your books, people could buy them. I got interviewed by like the news. But I was
so
like
cool.
12, and it was a book that was just about actually death and grief. Now that I think about it, it was actually weird. It was like this mom passing away and this young girl trying to figure it out for herself. It's a little bit supernatural. She finds something and it kind of takes her on this crazy adventure, but it was more so wrapped around definitely isolated children, and definitely a sense of not belonging. And there was, a grief aspect in it too, but it was definitely super unrelated to like everything at the time. My family was like, "You wrote a what?" And it's so funny because it's so low quality too, because I was like, literally, I think 12th is like right before, that's 7th grade. So that's 7th grade.
It's young.
And it's so young. And I remember I illustrated it all myself. And my teacher was like, I'm such a procrastinator that like the book got approved and the drawings need to be done. And I'll never forget, like the day of the thing of the book getting published, they're like, "Hey, so we need your cover." Well, I was drawing a cover all the way here. So the cover is so funny, but it is so me at the same time because it really like it was just such a factor in life where like I just loved writing and I loved like communicating and I would be on I forget the website. It's called like it was fitsomething.com, but you used to be able to actually make books and it had like different chapters and everything. You could read other people's books and I was super into like writing. And I think I had before that website crashed and now it's no longer a thing. I think I had like 3 progress books on there. But at a huge point in my life, like I definitely one of my other hobbies is I love singing too. So definitely writing and singing all come hand in hand. But definitely I would say like those are like huge hobbies that still ring true today. I mean, even in dog training, like the goal is for sure to obviously start putting out a little bit more content and more educational material. And that helps a lot that I have that skill within kind of communicating and comprehension skills. But that book is just so funny to me. Every time I think back on it, it just like reminds me just in this like stage of I was just so young and fresh and just so unapologetically like me. Like you look at the book and it's just like it looks like a child wrote it and it really was a child that wrote it. Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm gonna go Google it after this. That's amazing though. You seem like such a creative person. So I think it's just so wonderful that you're like combining like the writing and the like being like a people person, in small quantities. And everything else like are helping you through even like the moments of grief that still kind of come up today. So I think that's just like such a beautiful message. But yeah, I just want to thank you so much for being on the podcast. It was such a joy hearing your story, the good parts, the bad parts. I know like it's just kind of like a good, picture of what life is for so many people, not like your specific story, but just like the ups and downs. So before we go, I just wanted to ask like, where can people go to learn more about you? If you want to share any like social media handles, you can do that too.
Yeah. I would say like my biggest one, I'm so fully invested in dogs at this point that I use my personal account. You could probably find me on my full name, but ideally my business name is called Astral Canine. So ASTRAL. And I took that really off me becoming a spiritual person and really insight and just constellation stuff. So my business is very a little bit, again, relationship tailored based training. But so that's kind of my business name. And, ideally I'm more so on Instagram and that's mainly my life now. I would say like I'm so fully into dogs at this point
Yeah.
where I'm just like at my tipping of just like where I'm at in terms of business, and it's just only up for here. It's really just like so honestly awesome that for like the first in my life I'm so motivated over something. So that's where I'm at. I really have nothing else going on for me besides dogs. But yeah, dogs is everything to me right now. So
Yeah.
that's yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alexandria. It was great to meet you. And I hope we can maybe like connect in the future and get a little update from you. But until then, I hope you take care and have a great rest of your day.
Okay. Thank you so much, Avery. Thank you so much for this platform and this podcast.
Of course. All right. Bye.
Alrighty. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the To Be Honest podcast. We are incredibly grateful for your support over the last 4 seasons and look forward to sharing even more personal mental health journeys and stories in the future to help normalize the conversation around this topic. To Be Honest is a program of Momentum for Health that encourages youth and young adults ages 14 to 25 to express themselves through creative media and seek help in times of need. If you or a loved one is looking for behavioral health services, please call 988 to locate options available in your area. Season 4 of the podcast is hosted and edited by me, Avery Cruz. We'll also be incorporating a few special episodes into the season created and recorded by a handful of our Youth Advisory Board members who will be introduced in future episodes. The podcast theme music was created by Julia Steele. To learn more about the To Be Honest program, please visit www.tobehonest.today and follow us on Instagram for the latest news at tobeHonest.today. Bye!